Afternoon. Thanks for hanging in there. So after 2 days, we're all fully up to speed on quantum, right? We're all experts. We're all good. All right. Let's even after 2 days, I think it's still pretty heady stuff that intimidates a lot of us, and I want to know how you make it approachable for your partners and also your investors, your LPs. So I wonder if you want to jump in on that.
I don't.
No? You don't make it accessible, or you don't want to jump in?
No, what I mean by this is, I spent half my career, actually more than half my career, being a quantum educator, where I was explaining to whoever would like to listen to me, and to those who didn't want to listen to me, I would explain like the intricacy of quantum physics and quantum science and superposition entanglement, and and how they could be used to build sensors and computers and that sort of thing. But when it comes to my fellow investors, my partners, my LPs, they don't really care about the technology. I mean, it's intriguing, they like it. What they really care about is what it can do and how it can have an impact, and how it can bring disruption to technology. So we focus on this. We don't focus on how things work. I mean, this is why a fund like us, we are a quantum-only fund, and then half the partners are quantum physicists and engineers by training. That's why we exist. We exist so we can look into the science and de-risk it, so that the people who are experts in investment can do what they do. We don't spend time explaining how it works. We just explain, here's what it can do, and here's how it's going to change, and here's why we should be interested by this. But when we grab a beer, then we explain how it works, but it's just us geeking out. And that's really what matters at the end of the day, right? We don't care if it's quantum, if it's AI, if it's blockchain. Who cares? Can it do something quick, fast, cheap? Solve a problem that we have. That's bottom line.
Yeah, I think quantum fundamentally, right, it can be explained by something can be in two different states. So usually I just explain it can enable the process of parallel processing versus serial processing, and then jump straight into applications. So then it's, you can optimize routes faster, you can develop materials faster, you can develop new drugs faster. That usually resonates when explained that way. And then the other element is when people are confused about something new, they look for external validation. So I don't need to explain everything, but you point to, look at the McKinsey report that estimates quantum will be the new computing paradigm that's going to be a $100 billion market. They will go read it, and they actually want to be interested in learning about it. The governments are putting in this much capital. This company just raised another 100 million round. These external validation factors are really important when someone is maybe newer on the learning curve in terms of understanding the fundamental technology.
If I want to be a jerk, I would say your explanation is wrong. It's
because
not parallel.
You have to explain to your LPs?
Yeah, no, because it's so, and that's the thing, we fight often, like the whole, it can be in two places at once, this parallel processing, and I say that just as the educator hat that just comes in. We hear it all the time, and I don't blame you for saying this, everybody does, but this is actually not how it works. But again, it doesn't matter how it works, it's what it can really do. The how it works, that's what scientists and engineers are for. But the rest of everything you said, I love it. But again, it's science, it's complicated, but it doesn't really matter how it works.
So the question is LPs. I think that the vein of the question is, first of all, we're very different kinds of investors on this panel. So I work at a very large investment firm. I lead the tech for that. And I invest in public companies. And you could then say, well, who are the LPs of those? Well, that's grandma and retirees and you and me. And then we have private investments, and those funds also have different kinds of, maybe institutional, maybe also grandma. So I don't I think the question is not really who am I. At the end of the day, we are investors. This is a money panel. And money, at the end of the day, what do investors want? They want returns. Okay, so they want returns. So you're in the business of delivering returns. It just so happens that the job that I am tasked with, and others on the panel, is you are adjudicating investment decisions in a particular field to generate returns for grandma and shareholders, effectively. And then part of that process is to make judgments on you play the game on the field, and the game on the field for me is the technology industry. And so then from first principles, look at each of these technologies and say, does it matter? Does it matter? And if it matters, can you make the right decision so that it ultimately leads to capital growth? And then everything else follows with that, And I've been doing this 27 years in Silicon Valley, and I've seen many of these cycles. And this is another one, yet another one. And so you navigate that, and you make a decision and say, is it of consequence enough? Does it matter? And so I'm on this panel, and I have an investment in this space, and so I have the belief that it does matter. So that's it.
All right. Well, there you go. How much capital is being deployed in quantum from a venture and private investment standpoint?
Oh, they can answer. They have more stats. Let me give you some stats. The total stock market in the world, the market cap of the world, it's about $100 trillion, $115 trillion. That is the global market cap of all publicly traded capitalized equity in the world. Okay? Quantum today, the few public traded, it's 20 billion. Nothing. Fractions of a percent. That said, the 10 biggest tech companies on planet Earth are about 18 trillion. 18 of the 100. It's almost 18% is in 10 companies. Now, when you look at the top 10, what do they have in common? They're all compute companies. They're compute companies. So you have the 4 hyperscalers. I add Meta in there. So Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Meta. That's 4. They all are building their own chips. They're all running their cloud, and they're all racing for AI. Then you have Broadcom, NVIDIA, and TSMC. That's 3 semiconductors. That's 7 of the Mag 10. Then you have Apple. They build their own chips. They build their own compute stack. And then you've got Tesla. They're building AI. They're building their own chips. And they're building robots. And then you got Oracle, which used to be a database company. Now it's building Stargate and chips. And, So the value of the world's 18% of the publicly traded market, 18 trillion is in those 10, not to mention all the others. So the market has changed its ascribed value to compute. Compute. You build the chips, or you run the chips, you plug in electricity, and you resell tokens. And you generate or create tokens as an AI model. That, to me, is called compute. It's already 18% of the world's market cap. And going to your first question, why does quantum matter? Is because in the future, I've been doing this 27 years, there comes a time in a career where you don't have an opportunity to invest in a new computing platform. The last 40 or 50 years has been classical computing. CPU, GPU, AI is an adjunct on top of the GPU. So imagine you have the opportunity to invest in a new computing platform, the QPU. Okay? It ushers in a new kind of computing platform. Where is the market cap of the world gone? It's gone to compute. So therefore, if we can bring a second computing paradigm, and you know that history, like I think someone was saying, pattern recognition. Well, the value, the market, the stock market, and investors are saying the value goes to compute. Well, here's an opportunity to invest in the new computer paradigm, right? Is that then worth it? And it's 20 billion in the public market, probably a couple billion in the private market. It's a drop in the bucket. If it's even 5% or 10% of NVIDIA's market cap, the prize, that is the prize.
So I think to answer your question,
See,
I think
early.
it's probably around. To answer your question, I think the stat I heard was just around 2 billion total year to date that's been venture funded into quantum companies. You compare that to the most recent round for OpenAI, which that round alone is 40 billion at a 400 billion valuation. And the other thing to interject here is it wasn't that long ago that OpenAI raised its first round, which is 100 million. And that was maybe 5 years ago. So if you believe that quantum is the next shift that's somewhat on a similar path as AI, you can pretty quickly get excited that the amount of capital going to the space is quickly going to mirror AI. Today, right, you're already seeing 100 million rounds for quantum companies. There's just not that many of them and not that many investors. But OpenAI and Anthropic, both their first rounds were maybe 5 years ago at 100 million. And this year, one is worth 400 billion and one is worth 100 billion.
I would also add, OpenAI started 2015. The transformer algorithm. Basically, at the end of the day, AI is an algorithm running on compute. And you plug in electricity. You plug in electricity, generates chips, that generates tokens, and you run an algorithm called a transformer. The transformer was created 2017. That one algorithm, okay, and throw a diffusion algorithm. 1.5 algorithms is probably worth, of that 18 trillion, I bet half of that value is in that one algorithm. I bet $10 trillion of the market cap of the world is in the transformer algorithm. And so the quantum is the same thing. You're going to have a compute layer, and you're going to run an algorithm. Shor's algorithm on encryption. Grover's algorithms is quadratic speedup. You're going to have whatever, biology, chemistry algorithm. Some unlock, and we don't know. No one knows. And so the value of an algorithm on a compute stack could be worth theoretically trillions of dollars. And so that in lies the opportunity, and investors are, we have, something I know there's going to be a question about, no one's putting any money in this space, okay? So and that's because it's fear, and you need courage.
Before I go, you've been a little silent. I'll let you go.
What are you seeing on the investment banking side?
I think it's interesting, right? I think the three things that sort of are very interesting. A lot of these things, when they start off, are hard. Like when semiconductors started off, many people knew what semiconductors were. A lot of these new things are hard and difficult to do, right? So when
Not to
things
mention
start off,
expensive.
yeah, when things start off, they're meant to be difficult and hard, and there needs to be sort of an application. But there is the other point. Like I think a lot of investors who sort of want to invest in, it requires specialized knowledge. And that knowledge is not easy to get. There are not that many people who know. Like we talk about, a fraction of people are fearful because there is also a lack of the fact that there is not enough experience of investing in hard tech technologies. And I think that's going to come, right? It's just going to be dragged into it and come.
And I'd just like to add up a little bit to both your comments. So I really like the analogy of all the companies and the compute stack, but something that we really need to also realize is all of the compute power and the magic that we've built for the past 50 years, it's 60, 70 years. It's all based on the same thing, zeros and ones, and we got really, really, really good at doing it. Quantum computing is a shift in paradigm. Okay, so AI, as magical as it can be, it's zeros and ones. We just got really good. You can think of it maybe as a culmination of the digital era. Now we're shifting into a new paradigm where we know for sure that it's fundamentally more powerful, okay? And then today, we already know some application. You mentioned Shor algorithm. We look at quantum simulation that will unlock material discoveries and all this. But to get from, when we started thinking about digital computing, which is way before we built one in the 20s, to today, there's been many generations that, lived with computers, and then my son is born and he can already swipe, and he was 2 years old, he could swipe. We can expect the same thing of quantum, and where I'm heading with this is that the power that we already know of what quantum can do is nothing compared to what we're gonna do in a few years, in a few generations. And what is it gonna do? I don't know, but we have a new toolbox that is fundamentally more powerful. So, and we are starting to build stuff. Like, we're a baby step, but it's advancing incredibly fast. So from a technological point of view, from a wealth generation point of view, sky is the limit. And we're at the, at the beginning of it, and this is why we need to put everything we got there. But where are we gonna end? We have no idea, but it's gonna be huge. And then we need to be, and that investor, we need to be there early on to capitalize on the first step. Also, we need to be there to catalyze it and then make it move faster.
See, you're all early by definition, given that to your point, there's not a lot of capital, and there's not a lot of people who've written checks. What was the first deal? Tell me about your first investment in quantum and what that was like, and what got you invested in.
Well, he's an early stage quantum guy, but I'll speak on behalf of the big institutional. 2019, I think, 6 years ago. I've only made one investment in PsiQuantum here, and the exploration space was really exploration, because I've been a semiconductor and software investor many decades. And I knew that Moore's law was running out of gas. And I was like, okay, what's beyond Moore's law? And that got me into the quantum world. And then I said, I have no idea what could scale. So we're talking about quantum computers, but if you don't have a big enough machine, what's the point? There's no point. And we were talking about Shor's algorithm. We need scale, way bigger than we have right now, right? So you need to then bet on something that could scale, hit escape velocity, and be a meaningful company. And so I said, well, I'm going to pick on this because it's leveraging Moore's silicon laws and photonics, et cetera. And then comes in not only the technology. There's also something, and you're seeing that in AI. You need to create a sense of inevitability, and that comes with capital. So you got to raise more money than anybody else, and say that is the guy that is going to take it all the way. And I've invested a lot of semiconductor companies privately, publicly. Quantum is another extension of silicon. Just to play the game in a startup private semiconductor, I think it's $1 billion minimum. Okay, to play AI silicon, it's billions, and to play the game of AI foundation model, I think it's at least 20 billion. And if you believe Meta, they're saying they're going to build 5 gigawatts. To buy 1 gigawatt AI is 50 billion. So 5 times 50 is 250. So now the new game in town in AI compute is 250 billion. So you want to play that game, it's 250. To play the game in private silicon is a couple billion. To play the game in quantum minimum computing, not algorithms, not apps, that's $1 billion. So if you don't have that much money, you can talk all day. I don't think you're going to play the game. You got to play the game on the field, and that requires capital, technology, the coalesce, of what we're seeing here in Chicago, the government sponsorship, national labs, universities, You got to put it all together and then what I call create a sense of inevitability and escape velocity where you are now anointed one of those leaders.
What was your first deal?
Me?
Yeah. And what was the first quantum deal you funded?
Sorry, the what?
The first quantum deal you did?
First quantum deal. We made a bunch in parallel to start. So
Okay.
But I'll
Pick one.
I wanted to do a little comment on those things. Like we all week, last couple of days, we've talked a lot about computing, and yes, computing is definitely like the holy grail of what we're going for. We keep on forgetting that the quantum computer is not going to build itself, and we need tools to do that. Right? And a lot of those tools are just better version of things we have, and some of them are quantum on their own. Right? We also, let's not forget that this quantum endeavor, we need also to invest in quantum sensors. Because go to any of those quantum hardware companies, they all use sensors. And then today, there are even quantum computing companies that go out there and say, like, we should stop investing in sensors. It's useless. Let's all focus our capital on computing. It's like, go in your lab, man, and go check out what you have. You can build your stuff because somebody built the sensors. And also, the computer is going to be able to work at large scale by being able to communicate with each other. So there's also the quantum communication side. So sometimes we forget that part, which is great for us because it leaves the field wide open to make some good investment in sensors and communication. We also do it in the computing side. So let's not forget all the enabling technology. So this is why we are a quantum-only fund. So we cannot afford to just do qubits investment. It would be, from a risk mitigation point of view, it would be absolutely stupid. So that's why we did make some investment in qubits. It's called Quantacet. They do superconducting qubits based in Quebec. But we also invest in the whole supply chain. So one of the first investment that we've done was actually a company, classical company, nothing quantum. But they found a way to use, they used to develop mid-IR lasers, but then they found out that they can use those lasers to clean, trim, and calibrate photonics chips. Purely classical stuff. But guess what? Half of the business in quantum is photonics. And then photonics fabrication, you throw about half of the wafer away because our technology is not there. And then with that, we can enable the classical photonics transition that we are, as well as the quantum part. So that was one of them that we've done that we're pretty happy. And the challenge with, the quantum computing hardware, like it's a big bet, but it's $1 trillion business overnight, right? The one who builds it the first, $1 trillion, and then you multiply your investment by an ungodly amount. With the sensors and the supply chain is to find the right market, because sometimes it will be hard to find the market that would be VC backable, as we call it. You can have great boutique company, but to have something that can multiply your investment by 10, 20, because it's not because we're greedy, but that's the model of VC, right? We make 20 investment, 18 die, so we need to make all the money with 2. So they need to scale. So, and in the sensor, the nice thing is it's a bit of a self-fulfilling thing. Like they can help build quantum technologies, but also they can also have application that are not for quantum computing. They can be application for healthcare, for geology, for a whole bunch of other things. So it's to find that right moment. So that's the right balance, and this is sort of our first investment was keeping that in mind. How do we de-risk all the quantum investment that we do by not putting all our eggs in one basket and being able to, make return in 14 years, right? So that's a challenge.
I think as Tony mentioned, there were 2 phases of capital that came in. I think, you need a lot of capital. A lot of capital comes in when markets are good. And so you saw the initial wave of large checks being written in quantum in 2020, 2021. During the SPAC times, a whole bunch of players went in, raised a lot of capital, and then you had the dull moment in 22, 23. But the capital that was raised in 2020, 2021 allowed a lot of these companies to keep innovating and moving the supply chain ball along. And then I think it's all again coming back. I think 2024 opened the floodgates back again with AI, that quantum can keep moving. And there's a really important point on the supply chain is a lot of the innovations that you see actually on the supply chain, photonics chips, for example, benefited from the AI investment. A tremendous amount of AI capital that's deployed has gone in developing the photonic supply chain, which is extremely, extremely critical for quantum. So some of these associated investments have also gone in and that strengthened the quantum ecosystem. PsiQuantum, for example, relies heavily on some of the laser developments that have happened, and they've happened because of the investment that's gone into AI. And I think that's going to help a whole bunch of associated investments in quantum going forward.
Maybe I'll offer the perspective of a investor that's spending a lot of time in this space but have not yet pulled the trigger on it. And
I got 7 companies for you.
perfect.
So what's going to make you say yes?
Well, I think the issue is it's just really hard to estimate the investment horizon. And I work at a family office, so we are patient capital, but patient capital is not 50 years, right?
Not that patient.
It's hard to estimate that. And I was a computer engineer at University of Illinois over 20 years ago, and a quarter of my physics coursework was quantum. We were already talking about quantum at that time. And we're obviously way past that, but at the time I wouldn't have thought it was going to be 2030 before we're talking about a quantum computer. And if we were to make the AI parallel again, of course, if you're on the cusp of a chat GPT moment, then a lot of value is created in the next 5 years, as we have seen. Earlier stages of AI research, not so much. So I think that's the challenge. And I'm going to share a very unpopular perspective, but I think it's important for people to hear this, which is one of the reasons that a lot of the investors are hesitating is they think that when the wave is here, it's going to be obvious. So again, using AI as an example, when LLMs came, we didn't have to be, as a late stage investor, right? We're in the software space, Series B through pre-IPO. We didn't have to be in the Series A of OpenAI. Of course, it would have been great, but from 2023 to today, you have billions, hundreds of billions created at the foundation layer, hundreds of billions created at the infrastructure layer, even application layer, which is sort of the last layer of the tech stack to go. You're seeing $5 billion in Harvey, which is in legal tech, $5 billion in the Bridge, which is in healthcare AI. That's all happened in the last year. You have Glean, Perplexity on the search engine, that's almost at 10 billion each. So the pushback that you probably hear is we can afford to wait because there's enough value to be had once things are obvious. So if I were an entrepreneur, right, the job you have to do is convince investors that they need to have FOMO because they will lose out for whatever reason if they don't act today.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a risk calculus, and most investors are FOMO, right? And rightfully so. They want to see the whites of their eyes before they'll pull the trigger. But AI is a great analog, but you also have, in quantum, it's like you got to build the NVIDIA before you get the ChatGPT. And so we're in quantum, we still have to build the NVIDIA, and then we get the ChatGPT. But like the thing in AI that's really interesting though is that a lot of these companies, not Harvey, but you've seen these deals that have gone down recently. I'm not gonna, that are basically acqui-hires. They're not buying the company. It's the buyers perceive no value in that application. The value is in the talent and the compute. So it's like you have a company with X. I just want the 10 engineers, and by the way, I have a bunch of compute. The value of your little application, which is a wrapper that sits on an AI model. I don't need it. I just want the talent on my compute. And so you could be waiting and plowing money into these AI app companies, but is there a moat? Is there any sustainability? On the other hand, the compute side was where, like I think I said in my opening remarks, a lot of the value has gravitated to that part of the stack. However, it's very difficult to predict. It's like you bet on the wrong company, it goes to zero. And so therein lies, this is the conundrum.
Yeah. And to your point, there's, unlike software or dating apps, as somebody mentioned earlier, there aren't 10 or 12 of those in your portfolio, except maybe yours. So that also makes the calculus interesting in terms of making those bets.
The calculus for quantum or for?
Yeah, just when you don't have a lot of a lot of companies in the portfolio to spread the bets across.
No.
The bets you do make become very, very important.
That's right. Yeah. No. Well, unless you bet on 820 and you usually need two. Yeah. Which is also. I mean, that is venture. Right?
Yeah.
So.
You mentioned something really interesting about the talent. That we're seeing the acquihires, resurface again. Talk about talent in quantum, which I think is kind of interesting, and that it reminds me of maybe what we saw in the early days of the web, in which there's not a real defined talent pipeline, except for folks like yourself who actually have formal education in quantum. You've got people coming from just all kinds of fields, but there's not a really established pipeline of quantum talent at every university in the country. Is that an advantage or a disadvantage for the industry right now?
This is a tougher talent pool. Software engineers, you can, it's relatively easy to build and produce. You can learn it off the web. This is actually hard science, hard physics. You actually have to go to school for 4, 6, 8 years to be some of these engineers. So I think this is a harder talent pool to replicate in the initial years. It'll have to come from the universities, and which is a problem, because not a lot of people are focusing on these hard sciences.
Well, the workforce and the talents, it's something you go to any quantum conference, whether it's an academic one or industry one, there's always going to be a panel on it, right? It's definitely an issue. We don't have enough, but not necessarily always for the reason we think, right? You mentioned, you need to go and do a PhD, and then, to need to learn all those things, do those quantum mechanics course and all this. Not everyone, because you don't need to be a full quantum physicist to play a critical role in building quantum computers or quantum sensors. Okay, you need some to advance the science, to advance the error correction part, to all those things. But you can see when there's been an increase in the speed of how the technology moved forward, was when we stopped only using quantum physicists or quantum trained people to build the stuff, and we started bringing technicians, electrical engineers, system engineers that were not fully trained in quantum, but they were quantum aware, right? Because at the end of the day, when you look at a full quantum computing stack, it's only the bottom that is behaving quantum, but everything else, like the signal that we use to control it, it's pure, it's RF, it's microwave, it's just electrical engineering. At the bottom is quantum. And then the way we fabricate it, you don't need a quantum physicist to fabricate the chip. You need a person who knows how to fabricate stuff, right? So there's just need talent that needs to be quantum aware. Yes, we need full quantum physicists and engineers, but it's not all the people that needs to be like that.
Let's demystify it. Just look at AI. Just look at AI. How many guys matter at the frontier labs? Okay, let's separate the compute, which is NVIDIA and a few guys that can build the compute, and then at the algorithm layer, at the advanced AGI labs, how many people matter? And you're seeing it in the acquihires. So they're getting paid more than LeBron James, okay? And there's only probably a couple hundred of those guys between China and the United States. So I bet, I don't know, I don't have all of the bios of every quantum physicist, and it's probably not radically different. It's not the number. It is have those guys aligned themselves with capital, with a set of companies, and like the guys that did the intention paper for the transformer. I don't know. You read the paper, and there's like 20 guys on the paper. There you go. That algorithm created multiple trillion dollars of value. It's not hundreds and hundreds of people. And I think the same thing's going to happen here. So like there is algorithmic and application work at the top, and the smart people will figure it out. And then you got to figure out the compute. And then once you figure out the compute, then who the hell knows what's going to happen? What applications will be built? I think there's enough smart people out there in the world, and they'll figure it out.
I would also not sleep on like the business talent, which I think a lot of companies in this space do. I think there's a general thought that, you know, we're just going to do our lab work and one day we're going to have a supercomputer and a quantum computer and then everyone's going to come. But I think the role of business-minded leaders as part of quantum computing companies, even at the early stages, is there's so much iterative process here, right? You need to talk to the government, you should form partnerships, you should have a bridge to the classical computing world, because there could be a state in the next few years where classical computing and quantum computing exist at the same time. And how do you think about that? How do you think about near-term commercialization opportunities so that you can sustain your runway, so you can continue your research, all these things. And at the end, kind of push comes to shove, you can always, the business-minded people can always strike a deal and acqui-hire, right? The talent that you don't have. So I think that's one of the things that we've seen is somewhat missing, is there's a thought that I can only focus 100% on research, and once I get there, the good things will come. But I would broaden your perspective and be a little more thoughtful in terms of thinking about the business side of things early on.
You posted something the other day on LinkedIn that I thought was really interesting regarding talent, that it was Nature that published a top 10 list of quantum research institutions. And shout out to U of C, which was number 6 on that list. But you pointed out that 6 of the top 10 of those institutions are not in the US.
Yeah.
And how important is that for both the industry?
I think talent is global. I mean, you know, you got. I had the opportunity, you know, to meet with the dean of my alma mater and Chicago and Northwestern last night, and you know, the composition of PhDs and these are global candidates, and a lot of these schools are. In quantum in particular, you know, Europe has a number of amazing, China has a number of amazing talent. And you just also, again, I go back to the AI, look at the AI talent. Look at all the people that were acqui-hired by Mark Zuckerberg. And I think more than half are Chinese. So, and I think quantum is probably, I would bet, it's a very global talent pool, and there's lots of great institutions. And so I think talent is, there's lots more people in the world, so that's all. I would attest to that, and you know, there should be mobility in intellectual capital, and then you align that intellectual capital with. You have a few opportunities, and then people it will attract that talent to those opportunities. And so I don't think of it in geopolitical terms like that per se.
It's definitely something when, because typically we will invest, we'll be the first check in a company, right? There will be a couple entrepreneurs that are just getting out of university, like we're the first person in. And looking at their access to talent is always something that we look at. But those top 10, top 20 thing at that level, personally, I think is full of garbage. I think it's, not without sounding like too pessimistic, but like those top 10 is like top 10 in lobbying the Nature paper to be in there. There's a lot of that. And quantum is still small enough that you know where the good pockets are. And they're not always in those top 10 schools. They are, don't get me wrong, they're excellent school and there's excellent researcher, but we've seen garbage talent coming out of that as well. It's a bit, no, we're still at the level that it can be a case-by-case basis. Being in a spot where you can have easy access to those, those little pockets, or knowing those pockets, or having relationship with the right professor at that right university, because there are some phenomenal talent that comes out of university that you never heard of, and there are really bad talent coming out of the top university in the world. And early on, when you invest in a company that have 3 people, and then they plan on growing to 15 people in the next year, every single one of those people needs to be top notch, no matter where they're from. And we've learned really early on that the few letters that are on the diploma often doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So having 6 universities outside of the US, or only one of them in Canada, University of Waterloo, alma mater, yay. I can tell you that you can build a very strong company with only Canadian, and I can say the early Google and IBM, go find their early quantum workers, they're all from Canada. And I'm not here I'm here to promote Canada a little bit. But they come from universities that you probably never heard of, but they have good researchers that create great talent, and we need to focus on that early on. Down the road, when it's a massive industry, then that'll be a bit more complex. But we have that luxury, but we don't produce enough. We still need to produce more. We still need to upskill people. We still need experience. Great, talented, graduated student, young, it's fantastic. But we also need to bring experience. Business experience often we're missing. Most young quantum companies are physicists or engineers trying to be entrepreneurs, and some of them have a really good intuition. Some of them don't have a clue what they have. So we need to bring the experience that arrive from outside the quantum. So we need to upskill, reskill as much as we can, as fast as we can, because that field is moving real fast.
I have a slightly different view. I think in the history that I've seen in Silicon Valley, it's not we're trying to manufacture armies. Those that are good, those that are amazing, the money and it is of the few and then not the many. I just look at AI. It's those, Toronto, Jeff Hinton's lab. That's a genesis of much of what we have today. It's a few amazing people. And if you're amazing and you can raise money and get you will be found. And we just got to foster that. That's it. And, it's history repeating itself over and over again, I think. And so, I know that the universities out there, they are producing great talent. You just got to align that talent with the capital, et cetera, and then take shots on goal to make these great companies.
So I have a capital question for you. How important at this stage, particularly in an industry that just requires so much of it, how important is government stepping up and putting out some money like they've done here in Illinois? I mean, committing $500 million to try and get something going. Is that a necessary catalyst, or
these are all aids? The Manhattan Project, or what DARPA did with obviously internet or space. Those are down order effects that the space race that have generational impact. So absolutely, but it's also not the panacea. The government alone is not going to create this. You do need private industry. You need, but it is an accelerant. It is definitely an accelerant. And if you can align all the, and many of the speakers on this today, the last 2 days have talked about that university, that public, the federal government, the state, all of that together. I just look at small, Australia, or even Taiwan. Taiwan in 2000 was nothing, right? TSMC was nothing. And they made a bet, or at least TSMC or Morris Chang, really. By the way, Morris Chang, great story on Morris Chang. He's like, he started his career at age 60-something. 64, I believe. He's like, and then he created TSMC from 64 to 80 or 90. He's 90. So TSMC, a small country, was nothing on the global roadmap. Nothing. They were nothing compared to Intel. And Morris Chang, in his 60s, created TSMC, which is what it is now. So a small country with no resources can make all the difference. And we are in the intellectual capital business. So why not Chicago? Why not, right? And, or Australia. It's possible here. This is, CHIPS Act, right? That money didn't really pour into Chicago. It went to Texas and Phoenix and New York. And so, that's the classical computing fab game. Well, okay, you guys missed that. So you're now in this game. Taiwan was able to do it. Cambridge created ARM, which is now the computing architecture of the world. So there are examples where it's not, why not? Why not Chicago? Why not other cities? Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to leave it there, but thank you guys for a great conversation. Thanks.